Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. My name is Caroline Heward and I'm known as the Harley Street Stress Expert. I'm also the resident therapist on USA Global TV and Radio. Our show today is Talking Heads and I'm an expert presenter in today's topic, which is the effects of social anxiety on relationships for Millennials and Gen Z. And it's part of the Mind and Body Connection series. So let's begin. I always like to start with a definition, and today is no exception. A definition of social anxiety disorder, shortened as SAD, S-A-D. It's an overwhelming fear of social situations like meeting or speaking to people. And it's also an intense, persistent fear of being watched and judged by others. Now, according to Beresford research, the birth year and in the year of 2024, when they become adults, the millennials are also known as Gen Y. And they were born between 1981 and 1996. And they are now, in the year 2024, 28 to 43. Gen Z, they are commonly known as the Zoomers, to rhyme with boomers, but they are nothing to do with the boomers. I think it must be a skit on the fact that the boomers and now we have the Zoomers. They were born between 1997 and 2012, and they are now in the year 2024 between 12 and 27. So let's understand a little bit more about the millennials. They are the digital natives. They grew up in screen activities every day. This was the first generation that were born with doing everything on the screen. They grew up in peacetime, which was in the 1990s, and also part of the boom time as well. They have suffered two economic crashes, one in 2000 and one in 2008. They also witnessed and experienced the aftermath of September 11 attacks, which is 9/11. Now, Gen Z, our Zoomers, they are the fully digital native generation. They were in the smartphone age. Everything is in the smartphone. Their hands are always on their phone. They have experienced and gone through the global pandemic. They have experienced political validity, the fact that so much has changed in our politics, not just in your own country, but globally. And they have also experienced changes in education due to the pandemic and the lockdown. And they are experiencing conversations around climate change. So why are millennials and Gen Z suffering so much stress? Why are the anxiety rates rising? Well, you'd be surprised to hear that the increasing use of technology is causing them to be drowned in gadgets. And what I mean by that is everything is done in a gadget. And because they are working with gadgets in every aspect in their home, in their work, in their social time, that is causing them to be more focused in the screen than in their personal relationships. Now, when you are focused in a screen for a long period of time, and I certainly have experienced this, there is a difference in the way that you come to when you start to speak to people face to face. Because you're used to seeing them on a screen and you're used to texting, it makes it very challenging to have eye contact, to look at them in the eye and to actually hold conversation. And that's because it's short. When you're in the screens, the conversation is short and you don't actually have to have that social interaction that you would have if you were face to face. Social media is on the rise. When I was growing up, which was I'm a baby boomer, so I was born one of the last in 1964, we didn't have screens or phones, but this is the age. These two generations have the age of social media. And so in social media, it's all about the likes. It's all about the social acceptance on screen. And there are many people that are showing up their best lives. They're showing when they are good. They're not actually showing and putting posts that are saying that they're having an off day. And so there is a lot of competition to look the best and to perform the best and to look like you're having a great life. Although underneath it all, when you're not at the screen and not in social media, life is a very different story. And so in terms of likes and in terms of reviews, this is something that I've encountered from a lot of people that are in the millennials, millennial generation and Gen X, Gen Z. And that is that they want to seek approval. They need to be liked. And so they're very much in the space of needing that testimonial, needing somebody to do a video testimonial for them, or needing someone to, if they've done any work, to get a gratification by getting that in writing, that testimonial. I actually met someone that was very, very proud of the fact that they had over 500 positive testimonials on their work. And I thought that was encouraging. It made me decide to work with that person. And at the same time, it made me realize that it's not something that I've been very focused on, because for me, it was word of mouth. And because of the generation that I come from, it wasn't so electronic. That now everything is so online that people are checking you out. And if you've only got 10 positive feedbacks, for instance, you're not seen as the best. And so somebody that has that kind of level of feedbacks that are positive, like 99%, 98%, it makes them feel very good. And so it is a hit, it's a dopamine hit to feel good. And they are looking for that hit to encourage the fact that they need the approval. How is this affecting them? Well, being on social media in particular, there is a fear of missing out. I did have one client once that turned around to me, and he dropped an email with the symptoms that he wanted to look at. And one of them was FOMO. And I didn't even know what it was. And when he came to see me, I asked him, can you please explain to me what FOMO means? And he says, oh yeah, you've not heard of it. It's fear of missing out. And I thought that was a really interesting symptom, because fear of missing out of what? Because everything is so readily available and being seen. Everything is there. Your whole life is being seen by others. And so if you're not at that event or not doing something that everybody else is doing, or you're in or you're working, then you will feel, many of them are feeling that they're missing out. And they're fearing that that they're missing out on activities and experiences. So this generation is very much an experiential generation, that they are very much in their screens in terms of their experience. So how is that affecting how they are actually living? If you are glued to your screens and checking how many likes, how many approval testimonials that you have, and if your post got any recognition, if this is your focus, you are very much living here in the mind. And there's a disconnection with the experience of the sensory body. And I'm going to explain a little bit more about that as we go on. The screen time is going to make you more focused in the mind, more mentally alert than being in the emotions and the sensory experiences. Let me explain a little bit more about what I mean by that. When the world shut down and when a lot of people went into their screens to carry on, there was a change in terms of how people socially interacted. And so it was very much about head and shoulders rather than the full body. And when you are experiencing socially interacting with somebody just from the face and on a screen, a lot can be hidden in the body language. A lot of tenseness, irritability can be hidden underneath what they don't see. And when you're stuck in the screen, you're actually experiencing a very high mental agility. You'll be very highly mentally alert and yet not feeling the sensory. I've done a few Zoom calls and found them very challenging in the fact that there's such an intense focus on looking at the person. And so it's not the way that we were born. It's not the way that we were supposed to be experiencing life. And because we're in the screen and our millennial generation and Zoomer generation are very much in their screens, because everything is smart these days, there is little activity and little time for them to actually experience feelings and emotions because they're very much in their headspace. They also have a lot of financial worries and an uncertainty about the future. And let's face it, in our past 4 or 5 years, there has been an extreme change in terms of the politics, the finances, rising costs, and that's not just in one country, that's globally. And so this generation have a lot of fear and uncertainty around their future, whereas in previous generations there was a route, there was a way forward that was easy to see. It was much easier to see the career progression, and it was much easier to see that it was relationship, marriage, children, and then financial security with a job and a career. That now all of those things have changed. And so the millennials and Zoomer generations, they are looking at the previous generations, seeing what they had and realizing that there is no way that they can have and succeed that expectation that they're putting on themselves, and of course their families are putting on them to succeed in those very fundamental things that make life work in terms of your relationship, your security, your new home, and having a family. Many people are struggling to see how they could afford to have children. And so this generation, these 2 generations, are experiencing a very different lifestyle. And to add to insult to injury on that, they're also experiencing huge debt towards their lifestyle, to move towards the lifestyle that they want because of the student loans that they've taken out, which was very different from previous generations. So there is that expectation of a high level of education, and at the same time, there is a huge debt that comes with that. And so for a lot of people, they just see that there's a huge mountain to climb, and it's very difficult for them to see forward from that. And so this is why there is a lot of challenge for them in terms of the anxiety. Let me talk a little bit about anxiety. Anxiety is when you are thinking about the future, you are focused on future things and future events. And what I've just outlined there in terms of the finances, making a home, buying a home, and a career, and clearing the debt from the student loans, all of these things are future things. Also, in the media, they are very, very clued into the media. And so they can't escape the barrage of messages that are saying about the rising costs and climate change and the changing world of politics and the fact that some things are working, some things aren't. And they just are seeing all the things that are not working. Whereas previous generations, because there wasn't the social media outlet in the way that it is today, they didn't see what was happening globally. So they were children and they enjoyed time without being photographed, without needing to be liked, without seeking the approval. Now, these two generations are very much approval seekers and people pleasers. And they live on that edge of making sure that they please everyone. So there is a lot of things that are piled onto these two particular generations. And in honesty, in terms of the way that they're looking at life, they're seeing that they've been shortchanged, that life is not as easy as it was for the previous generations. It's much harder to get noticed. And so there is a huge amount of uncertainty as to what happens next. Now, in previous generations, there wasn't such messaging being bombarded at them in all places. Here, it's everywhere. In previous generations, the world was much smaller. In these two generations, the world is much bigger and yet smaller. They can see what's going on the other side of the world very easily. And so the world is different. It's become a community. It's a global community. And they can see what's happening and they're hearing all the messages. And this is what's concerning them. They also see the challenges of their parents. They see the challenges of that work hard and living for work rather than having any social time or much playtime. And so they're very much a generation that is looking to take the balance and have more of a work-life balance. And certainly the Zoomers in particular are being called work shy and they are being called lazy because they are balancing time. They are having and want a work-life balance because they have seen the demise of what's happened to their parents. So if you add all of this into the mix, it doesn't look good. And more to the point, what happens to these two particular generations, they still have to succeed. They still internally want to have all the things that previous generations had. And so from this perspective, there is worry and there is anger that they're not achieving what they wanted to achieve or what other generations previous to them achieved at their time in life. And that makes them very, very irritable. So let's look at what's happening when they are feeling anxious and the effects that it's having on the relationships. Because with all this anxiety, and it will take place in the workplace mainly, and it will also overspill into their family life and also their intimate relationships. Their feelings will be repressed. When you are living in a high level of anxiety, you're very much in the mind. You're not connected to the five sensories because you're very highly mentally alert. Now, what I do want to share here with you is that when you were born with no mind. You were goo goo and gaga. There was absolutely no mind. And life, things happen. And in today's culture, certainly in this Western culture, we are in a situation where we have to get on with it. So if something happens that's difficult, we just have to keep calm and get on with it. And I was surprised when I saw the slogans. I can't remember when it started, but I started seeing slogans saying, keep calm and carry on. Certainly a lot of those signs on mugs and all sorts of paraphernalia, keep calm and carry on. And this is because it was noting that there was difficulties. It was accepting that there are world challenges. And yet it was expected that you kept calm and carried on. Now, when you do that, if there is any level of fear or sadness or upset or loneliness, and you are pushing down those feelings, those emotions, because you have to carry on, what happens is the escape route is the mind. Now, when you push down the feelings and emotions, it means that you're on autopilot. What that means is that you're walking around almost living through the mind. So living through the thinking, conversation, analytical mind. You're not actually experiencing, you're living in your thoughts and what the conversations are and what you're thinking. And so there is a disconnect, and you're living in the head. And we call this being cut off from the neck down. So everything is happening up here rather than from the neck down. And so there is no sensory experiences. And this is one of the reasons why these two generations will reach out and want the experiences, the sensory experiences. Now, I've spoken to a lot of people within these two generations, particularly because I want to know what life is like for them, because there isn't the certainty of previous generations. And the fact that they overthink and are very analytical makes them very, very good workers. It makes them very logical, very practical, and it makes them really good people to have on your team, because they're not going to throw a hissy fit at you, and they're not going to get upset because they are in their minds. They are very overthinking. The downside of that, while they're overly thinking and analysing and trying to work out what to say next, is that they're not living. They are experiencing everything through the mind. And they will probably hold things back that would be very relevant to say, and they are the ones that are deciphering what the other person wants to hear or not to hear. There's also a feeling of difficulties around their decisions being scrutinized. And what I mean by that is that they worry that people will be judging them. So they will take time to make decisions. They won't take their decisions lightly. And from that perspective, they will be very disconnected, and they will be very detached in any family or personal relationships. So how does that affect the intimate relationship and the personal relationships? Well, they will find it very difficult to have any type of physical interaction in terms of touch. Hugs might be difficult because they will not feel the sensitivity of their emotions when they are touched, and so they would rather keep their personal space. Have you ever tried to hug someone and they've backed away and they felt very uncomfortable, and you're not threatening in any way, but they're feeling uncomfortable? And if somebody's patting you on the back when you're giving them a hug, they definitely aren't comfortable in giving you that hug. And so rather than saying no, they don't want to offend. They are definitely life's pleasers. They want to appease you, so they will allow the hug, but they'll be patting you on the back to not be so connected to you. I've had a lot of conversations with many different types of people in these two generations. And I would say that it's common throughout, that the conversations that I've had with them have been very much in the vein of, it's difficult. If it's a work-based conversation, then it's practical, logical, and it has no emotion. So usually, certainly the millennials in particular will succeed in their business life. They will succeed because they're devoid of the emotions. They're very analytical and thinking conversation. And because of that, and because of that's the way that they're behaving normally in their everyday, they can't switch it off. They go home and they're still the same. And so this will result in a lack of contact in terms of looking at the person. They will feel uncomfortable to go into eye contact. And so they will avoid, at the very most, face-to-face conversations. Now, I had an interesting experience where I was looking to speak to someone that I'd become very, very good friends with, and everything was done by text. And I found this very fascinating and couldn't understand, and I got very frustrated that they wouldn't pick up the phone. And then I found out, and that person enlightened me when we'd been in that text conversation for about an hour or so, that they suffer with social anxiety and prefer not to pick up the phone, and they felt much more comfortable in texting. Now, I thought that was really interesting, and so I started to ask a lot of other people. Every time I went to a shop or I saw somebody on a train or a tube or a bus, I would have these conversations, and I'm very prone to have interesting conversations with young people. And I was hearing the same story, that they found it challenging. And certainly when I spoke to young people in retail, they were commenting to me that they were okay in work because they had to perform. But when they went into their personal life, they didn't like face-to-face conversations. And I had a conversation with a young policewoman, and she was talking to a young lad, and he was like sort of looking away and turning, and then she made a comment saying, "Well, on your way now." And I went up to her and I said, "How is it? What's it like policing in the city centre?" Because I was in Birmingham at the time, with what's in our changed world. And she started to enlighten me in terms of how things had changed. She said it's very difficult to have a conversation with these people because they don't actually know how to put the sentences together. And so she said, and it was quite fascinating to me to hear that they couldn't string more than one or two sentences together. She says, because it's as much as they would text is as much as they would be able to say face to face. And they averted eye gaze, they would always look down. And I says, well, have they done anything wrong? And she commented, no, it's simply the way that they respond to face conversation. And I found this fascinating because it's not just the experience from the policewoman that I spoke to, also a lot of the young girls and boys and men and women that I've spoken to. And also in my research, because I like to do first-hand research too, to understand, I'm very curious behaviourally as to why things are like they are, why people are responding behaviourally the way they are. And from that perspective, it was I was now understanding why phone conversations were difficult and why texting was much easier. So let's move on to how that will impact the person themselves. It will limit them in terms of how they experience life. It will limit them in terms of how they can experience personal relationships, friendships, and also it will limit their capacity to live a much fulfilled life. So some of them, they will experience and turn towards alcohol. I have also in my research found that many young people are teetotalers. So it's not the alcohol that they're going to, and some are. And it's important to mention it because it's not a case of everybody abstaining. There is some of this generation that are turning to alcohol to relax, to feel something. That these substances are going to make them feel even more numb. So recreational substances, caffeine, they might turn to a lot of coffee, and we certainly have become very much a coffee culture. And they will also turn to larger meals at the end of the day to move into a place of comfort, maybe even sweets, chocolate. And they might even turn to the screen late at night to escape what they are experiencing. And all of this is because they are in the screens. So if they're in the screens at night, they will stay mentally alert, so sleep will be difficult. Now, I want to cover a few things about why things are difficult for these two generations in particular. In previous generations, if something happened, at least there was places and people that you could speak to, talk to a friend. Here, they're very much keeping everything in. Now, what can happen when you keep things down and you don't express the emotion or the anger or the upset? What happens is it can affect you physically, emotionally, mentally, behaviourally. It can affect how you respond. And in my research, both first-hand research in conversations and also in looking in third-hand research, I found that many young people in Generation Z, our Zoomers and our Millennials, are on antidepressants. I was really saddened to hear this because I couldn't believe how easy and how challenging it was to be for the young people, and they're turning to tranquillitic medication. It seems to be the accepted way that they're on medication. I actually spoke to somebody very recently that told me that they were just 20 and they've been seeing different therapists and in the NHS system for depression. And that really surprised me, 20. I can remember being such a fun girl at 20 and everything was my oyster and everything was amazing. Everything was easy and everything was experiential. And I'm amazed that tranquillitic medication is being used by a lot of our younger generation. And this will deaden the sensory experiences. They will not feel life, they will exist life. It's almost like they're going through the motions without the emotion. And living in their mind and not living in reality, because if they're living in the screen, that is not real. And even though I'm here on the screen, it's not real to live permanently in the screen, to actually be texting. It can be very draining mentally to be texting in a screen or to be in videos all of the time. And it's not how we were meant to live in terms of being human. So how can you move away from the screen? Well, I recommend that you reduce your screen time. I recommend that you reduce the time that you're in your screens, especially towards the back end of the day, because whatever you are watching and whatever screen time that you have just before bedtime, you will still be consciously aware and mentally drained. And even though you're exhausted at the end of the day, you're still mentally alert. So reduce your screen time at night if possible. Reduce larger meals, have smaller meals, and away from bedtime, and reduce your coffee intake late at night. I would also recommend exercise. I'm not one for being in the gym. But this might be something that is good for you, and it might be a choice. And certainly in the summer and in the warmer weather, it's much easier to go to the gym than it is when it's in the winter time. If you are a gym person and if you are comfortable in being in the gym and taking those trips, what that does is it takes the energy out of the mind and it puts the energy back into the body. It starts to ground you, and so that you feel different. You will feel much more in your body rather than being in the screen in your mind. And so even if you did a run around the block, even if you did some aerobic, like some swimming, it doesn't matter how small it is, even if it's a brisk walk. I have found that I've been very glued to my screen as of late, certainly in doing these shows and doing lots of work. We are in the computer screens and in all sorts of other screens as well, in our phone screens, that when I have gone out, I've actually felt alive. I've thought, air. And this is what I'm inviting you to do, to take that stroll, to walk. And it doesn't really matter if it's in nature. It doesn't really matter if you can't find nature. It's about being outside of an enclosed environment. It's about being where the sun is, or maybe in this country where the rain is, so that you become sensory and that you empty the mind. And I would recommend, because I have seen many people on their walks glued to their phones or even with a headset on. If you're in a headset and you're out, you're still in your mind. And so I would recommend that you remove the headset and actually experience from your sensories rather than being disrupted, disturbed by what you are hearing in the mind. I would also recommend meditation. Now, some people get very frightened when they hear meditation. They say, I haven't got time for meditation. I can't do it. I just can't switch off. Well, let me give you a clue how you can be in a very simple meditation. Meditation is not difficult, not when I finish telling you how to meditate. You don't have to sit on a mountaintop. You don't have to sit cross-legged. My recommendation is that rather than doing 2 or 3 or 4 things, rather than multitasking, be focused and present in the one activity. When I'm speaking to anybody, especially in a call, I only do that one thing. And that person feels listened to, and they actually feel relaxed, even though they might be talking about things that are difficult, symptoms that are challenging, and difficult situations in their life. They actually feel relaxed. And I also have some people say to me, I don't ever feel that I'm listened to, and you are really easy to be with. And more to the point, I feel very relaxed, and that's not how I normally feel. Well, let me let you into a little secret. My voice is trained and it's an alpha level brainwave. I've been doing stress management work for over 20 years, 24 years to be exact. It's going to timestamp this video, since 2000. And through all of the different trainings, I have learned to talk in alpha level brainwave. And so if you listen to my voice for 15 to 20 minutes, you will feel relaxed. And that sounds very strange. I've had many people turn around to me and I've just seen them for a social evening. We've probably gone out for dinner or we've shared a glass of wine. They've turned around and they've said to me, I don't know what it is, but I always feel really relaxed and refreshed when I'm with you, and I sleep like a baby. And sometimes I just smile and say, yeah, I know. And that's because I don't switch off the voice. This is my voice. There's nothing added, nothing changed. This is how I speak. And as a part of my nature, I embody everything that I do. So it isn't about trying to be someone or do something. So in alpha level brainwave, when you're busy in the mind and everything's going 10 to the dozen, you are in beta brainwave. But when you move to alpha brainwave, the mind calms. This is what I call the duvet movement, where you feel more relaxed and it's like you're half asleep, half awake, and yet fully conscious of everything that's going on. I also recommend cognitive behaviour therapy. Cognitive behaviour therapy is looking at understanding what's causing the problems and also changing the behaviours, the triggers, when you understand what's causing you the problems. And obviously, when you have an understanding of what's causing your stresses and your change and your triggers in behaviours, this is where you can input a change of behaviour. And there is many different, very simple practices. And cognitive behaviour therapy is very much about awareness. Once you are aware of what's not working, it's at that point that you can change it. You can't solve something that you have no idea about. And one of the things that I like to do is share insights, understandings, awarenesses, because in those insights and understandings and awarenesses, that's the point that you can make your changes and you can live in a better way. Sleep is really important. And as I mentioned earlier on, to make sure that you reduce your screen time before bedtime, because if you're having a good night's sleep, you will feel better, you will feel different. And if you're waking up feeling that you don't want to get up and you could just do with staying in bed a bit longer, you haven't had good quality sleep. And so having good sleep where you feel and you wake up in the morning more refreshed is better than waking up feeling comatose. So my recommendation and my invitation is to stay away from the recreational substances and go back to what I would say is the more simple life. Go back to a place where it's easier, where the screen is not dominating your life. This has been a very complex subject, and I've done as much as I can to cover what I can cover in this particular show. There is many other things, many aspects about trauma that I can cover. Please do feel free to check out my other videos, of which I have covered many different subjects and topics to help you with your stress and anxiety. Thank you for your interest and your attention during this show. Please do subscribe to USA Global TV and Radio, where you'll find all the Talking Heads episodes under Talking Heads under the relevant years. This year it's 2024. This is my first one of 2024, and I will be doing 2 shows every month. Please do reach out if I may be of assistance to you or I may be in service to you. You can find me if you email me on nomorestress@live.co.uk, or you can call me on +44 if you're international, 07523 120 189. I offer a free short consultation, 15-minute consultation, more of a discovery call. And I'm also offering at the moment a 1-hour consultation over the phone or online, which is a ridiculous price of £50. Please take advantage. I look forward to helping you bust your stress. Namaste.
Hello, I'm children's author Diane Floyd Bain, and I am co-host for several of the USA Global TV and radio shows. I joined because of the purpose of the USA Global TV and radio. They provide content for the viewers and listeners, an opportunity for people around the world to have their own show or even be a guest on an existing show. We truly believe in helping others get their positive message out to the world. We also have the opportunity for the listeners. You can watch on several platforms, and on YouTube, you can ask questions and even give a comment. We absolutely love it. I love being part of the USA Global TV and Radio because I love positive messages. And who doesn't? And we need more of that in the world. We are a family, and we hope you will join us and become part of the family too.